The year is 1941. For much of the world, war raged. Europe was a bloody battlefield, Asia a theater of brutal conquest. But for most Americans, conflict felt distant, a tragedy unfolding on foreign shores. In the vast Pacific, Hawaii was an idyllic sanctuary, a haven of sun-drenched beaches, azure waters, and a dangerous illusion of peace. The island of Oahu, and specifically the mighty Pearl Harbor Naval Base, was home to the United States' greatest concentration of naval power, the Pacific Fleet. On the morning of Sunday, December 7, 1941, the routine was one of tranquility. Sailors and soldiers slept soundly, enjoyed breakfast, or prepared for a day of rest. Crucially, the battleships were moored in Battleship Row, a convenient, albeit vulnerable, formation for weekend maintenance. But beneath this veneer of calm lay a fatal flaw: complacency. The U.S. High Command, like the Allies later in the Ardennes, harbored a dangerous sense of security. Though diplomatic tensions with Japan were escalating, and general alerts about sabotage were in place, no one truly anticipated a full-scale aerial and naval assault. If an attack came, conventional wisdom dictated it would be far to the west, in the Philippines. In the pre-dawn darkness, 230 miles north of Oahu, a colossal force was positioning itself. The Kido Butai, Japan's first air fleet, comprised of 6 aircraft carriers and their escorts, cut silently through the waves. Led by Vice Admiral Chuchi Nagumo, this formidable strike force prepared to unleash an offensive that would shatter global peace and redefine warfare. The audacious plan, conceived by Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, was chillingly simple: a swift, decisive preemptive strike to cripple the Pacific Fleet, buying Japan crucial time to secure its dominance across Southeast Asia before the U.S. could retaliate effectively. This was not just an attack, it was an act of strategic desperation. The first inkling of impending disaster came at 6:45 a.m., when the U.S. destroyer USS Ward spotted and promptly sank a Japanese midget submarine attempting to infiltrate the harbor entrance. The alarm was raised, but due to a series of communication breakdowns and bureaucratic confusion, the urgent report was tragically dismissed or simply lost in the chain of command. Even more critically, at 7:02 a.m., a newly installed radar station at Opana Point on the northern tip of Oahu detected a massive formation of aircraft, over 50 planes, heading directly towards the island. The young, inexperienced officer on duty, assuming it was a scheduled flight of American B-17 bombers expected from California, casually told the operators, "Don't worry about it." The stage was set for total surprise. At 7:55 a.m., the tranquility of a perfect Sunday morning was shattered. The first Japanese aircraft peeled away from the formation, diving towards the base. The deafening roar of engines and the staccato rhythm of machine gun fire were, at first, mistaken by many sailors for a routine training exercise. Within minutes, the first wave of 183 aircraft, a devastating mix of dive bombers, torpedo planes, and Zero fighters, swarmed the skies over Pearl Harbor. The primary targets for this initial assault were the majestic battleships anchored along Battleship Row, and the critical airfields like Hickam Field and Wheeler Field. Destroying these airfields was paramount to ensure no American planes could retaliate. Japanese torpedo planes, utilizing specially modified torpedoes designed for the shallow waters of Pearl Harbor, executed daring low-level runs, aiming straight for the vulnerable hulls of the battleships, starting with the mighty USS Arizona. The shock and destruction were instantaneous. Sailors were caught completely off guard, many still at their posts, others scrambling desperately to reach battle stations. The first wave lasted just over 30 minutes, but in that brutal half-hour, it inflicted irreparable damage, irrevocably changing the face of the Pacific War. The Japanese attack, with pinpoint precision, focused its fury on the battleships. The USS Arizona, a symbol of American naval power, quickly became the embodiment of the day's catastrophe. At precisely 8:06 a.m., a Japanese high-altitude bomber released an armor-piercing bomb. It struck the Arizona's deck, penetrated deep, and ignited the forward ammunition magazine. The resulting explosion was cataclysmic. A colossal detonation ripped through the ship, lifting its mighty hull out of the water before it began its irreversible descent, sinking within a mere 9 minutes. Over 1,177 sailors and Marines perished aboard the Arizona, nearly half of all American casualties that day. Their bodies were never recovered, and the ship remains, to this day, at the bottom of the harbor, a hallowed memorial and a perpetual tomb for its fallen crew. The USS Arizona now stands as the most poignant and powerful symbol of the attack, a silent testament to the sudden and overwhelming brutality of that morning. Amidst the chaos, countless acts of desperate heroism unfolded. The USS Nevada, miraculously, was the only battleship able to get underway, making a valiant attempt to escape the harbor. Her engineering crew, toiling in the superheated inferno of the engine rooms under relentless fire, kept her propulsion going until she was deliberately beached to prevent her from sinking and blocking the vital navigation channel. Their courage saved the harbor. Across the fleet, men bravely battled raging fires, rescued shipmates from the oil-slicked, burning waters, and manned anti-aircraft guns, often without proper training, firing back at an enemy that seemed to hold all the cards. The sky over Hawaii, once a vibrant blue, was choked with thick, black smoke from burning ships, transforming the paradise into a suffocating inferno. The waters of the harbor, typically calm and inviting, boiled with burning oil and the tragic debris of shattered lives. The sheer scale of destruction was almost incomprehensible. In the midst of this unimaginable pandemonium, a story of extraordinary courage emerged, personified by an unlikely hero, Dorie Miller. Born in Waco, Texas, Dorie Miller joined the U.S. Navy in 1939. At a time when segregation was deeply entrenched, black servicemen were largely confined to roles as mess attendants, cooks, and stewards, non-combat positions. Miller was a messman third class aboard the USS West Virginia, anchored on Battleship Row, directly in the path of the Japanese onslaught. When the attack began, Miller was below deck, collecting laundry. The first torpedoes ripped into the West Virginia, shaking the massive ship violently. Miller rushed to his assigned battle station, an anti-aircraft battery, only to find it already destroyed by an earlier hit. Instead of fleeing, Miller made a split-second decision that would define his legacy. He moved to the main deck, where he saw the ship's commanding officer, Captain Mervyn S. Benyon, severely wounded by shrapnel. With utter disregard for his own safety, Miller helped carry Captain Benyon to a more sheltered spot on the bridge, attempting to shield him from the relentless strafing and explosions. He then stayed by the captain's side, even as the deck was swept by enemy fire, trying to ease his pain. Then, as the West Virginia continued to take hits and its anti-aircraft battery struggled, Miller saw an unmanned .50 caliber anti-aircraft machine gun. Despite having no formal training whatsoever on the weapon, as a messman, he was explicitly prohibited from using combat weaponry. He took control. With incredible bravery, Dorie Miller began firing at the attacking Japanese planes, aiming with fierce determination into the chaotic skies. For an estimated 15 minutes, under continuous enemy fire, he manned that gun, blazing away at the enemy, even as the West Virginia sank around him. His actions were a stark defiance of the systemic racism that had limited his role, proving his courage and skill under fire. He helped shoot down at least one, possibly several, Japanese aircraft, embodying the fighting spirit of the American sailor. Only after being ordered to abandon ship, and after helping numerous shipmates into the water, did Dorie Miller finally escape the sinking West Virginia. His actions were widely reported and he became one of the first celebrated heroes of the war, a potent symbol of valor and a challenge to the racial prejudices of the era. He was later awarded the Navy Cross, the third highest honor for valor, for his extraordinary heroism, a groundbreaking achievement for an African American at that time. At 8:54 a.m., the second wave of the Japanese attack arrived, comprising another 171 aircraft. This time, their targets shifted from the initial shock and awe to the remaining ships that could still be salvaged, and crucially, the shore installations, particularly the dry docks and fuel depots. The critical difference in this second wave was that the Americans were now fighting back with a vengeance. Anti-aircraft gunners, who had been caught completely off guard in the initial assault, were now alert, armed, and furious. The intensity of defensive fire dramatically increased, taking a heavier toll on the Japanese planes. However, the most profound and ultimately fatal error of Japan's entire operation lay not in Pearl Harbor itself, but in the decision-making of Vice Admiral Nagumo. Nagumo made the fateful choice not to launch a third wave. The most vital remaining targets were the colossal oil storage tanks, holding over 4.5 million barrels of fuel, and the extensive ship repair facilities, dry docks. Destroying these would have paralyzed American naval operations in the Pacific for months, effectively pushing the U.S. Pacific Fleet back to the West Coast. Critically, the primary strategic objective of the Japanese, to destroy the American aircraft carriers, USS Enterprise, Lexington, and Saratoga, failed entirely. They were fortuitously at sea on missions, escaping the attack completely. Nagumo's decision to withdraw was driven by a cautious fear of American counterattack and a belief that he had already achieved his primary tactical objectives. However, by leaving the critical infrastructure and, most importantly, the aircraft carriers intact, he ensured that the Pacific Fleet could recover and rebuild far more rapidly than Japan had ever anticipated. This strategic miscalculation would haunt Japan throughout the war. The attack lasted less than 2 hours, a mere 110 minutes, but the devastation was profound. 2,403 Americans killed, 2,008 Navy, 109 Marines, 218 Army, and 68 civilians. 18 ships sunk or severely damaged, including all 8 battleships. Over 300 aircraft destroyed or damaged. The tactical success for Japan was undeniable. They had delivered a devastating blow to the U.S. Pacific Fleet in a single, audacious strike. But, strategically, the attack was a monumental and fatal blunder. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, the brilliant architect of the Pearl Harbor attack, had himself grimly foreseen this outcome. He famously wrote, "I fear all we have done is to awaken a sleeping giant and fill him with a terrible resolve." He knew that provoking the United States without achieving a decisive, war-ending victory in that single blow was an act of profound strategic peril. On December 8, 1941, President Franklin D. Roosevelt delivered his historic address to Congress, declaring December 7 to be a date which will live in infamy. Within minutes, Congress overwhelmingly voted to declare war on Japan. The attack on Pearl Harbor did not destroy America's capacity to fight. Instead, it obliterated its neutrality and its complacency. The brutal surprise and the tragic cost in lives united a nation previously divided on intervention, awakening the sleeping giant to wage the war in the Pacific with a fury and determination that Japan could never have anticipated. Pearl Harbor was a decisive turning point, a point of no return, that ultimately led the United States to total victory less than 4 years later. The sacrifice of December 7, 1941, and the heroism of men like Dorie Miller, would never be forgotten, serving as an eternal reminder of the price of freedom and the resilience of the human spirit. The attack solidified America's resolve and set the stage for one of the most brutal and transformative conflicts in human history.